Good morning, Ms. Roy. You may be seated.
Thank you. Good morning.
I'm gonna need to use this. Good morning again.
Good morning.
So we're doing our own AV information again. So yesterday when we left off, I was about to ask you about 88-1, which was the garbage bag that was tied up. Is that correct?
It's knotted.
Knotted. Okay. But this is the item that you examined, correct?
Correct.
Now, I note that from your report that you did split some of the work from 88-1 between yourself and your colleague Anita Valonis, correct?
There was, in the submission 88, I did not do all the work. Anita did some of the work.
Did you undo the knot on this bag?
No, I didn't undo it.
Did someone else undo it? Did it arrive in this format as we see in this particular image, which is part of my defense exhibit R? Or was it number 408? Or was it in a different condition?
It was knotted. This is a photograph of how I received it.
Okay, so you don't know if anybody had already opened it up, turned it around, retied it, or anything like that
No, I don't.
before you got it?
That's correct.
Were you made aware that this was an item found in a garbage pail, a receptacle, with a large number of other items that were not inside it?
I was aware that it was collected from the garbage in Hartford on the Albany Avenue area. I was aware of that.
Okay. And you were aware that there were a number of items exposed in the receptacle in and around this bag when it was obtained, correct?
I'm aware that there were other items. I don't know what you mean by exposed.
As opposed to being inside that bag.
I just know that that bag came in submission 88.
All right, so you don't know the condition it was in and what it was found amongst when it was retrieved by the state police. Is that a fair
That's
statement?
correct.
Okay. And you indicated that one of the things you do in the lab is you have to be very careful. You wear gloves, you wear a smock or some kind of lab coat, correct?
Correct.
And is that part of the reason to make sure you don't contaminate one item with another, right?
Well, that's the reason we are covered up is that, A, we don't want to get any of our biological material on the evidence. And of course, we don't want to expose ourselves to any hazards that may be on the evidence.
Do you also switch gloves between each item you look at?
Oh, of course, and we switch gloves, at least I do, often while examining something.
In other words, that's so that you don't contaminate an item or a portion of an item from something you had already just looked at, correct?
Correct. I mean, we clean the whole area. We clean all our utensils. everything gets very well cleaned and disinfected with Clorox.
And you indicated Clorox is a substance that will get rid of many of the biological materials you look at?
Well, by Clorox, I should have said bleach. Clorox is a brand of bleach. Yes, it's what we use to clean down all our working areas. Yes.
But my question was, do you use that because it eliminates a lot of the residual biological matter
Yes.
that might be on the
Yes,
counter
exactly.
or
Yes.
on your gloves or anywhere else, right?
Yes, we just discard in a biological hazard. We don't clean our gloves off, we just discard them.
You indicated also that your concern, one of your concerns is not putting some of your own biological excretion, if you will, for want of a better word, onto the items you're examining, correct?
Correct, I wouldn't want my,
You could please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that this evidence that you should, I'm sorry, I'll start over. Do you solemnly swear or solemnly and sincerely affirm, as the case may be, that the evidence you shall give concerning this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or upon penalty of perjury?
I do.
Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Anita Valonis, Anita Vailonis.
Thank you.
As long as you may be seated.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ms. Valonis, would you just indicate to the jury where you were working in 2019?
I was employed at the State of Connecticut Forensic Science Laboratory.
And have you since retired?
I have.
When did you retire?
April 1st, 2022.
What was your position at the laboratory prior to retirement?
I was a Forensic Science Examiner 2 in the Forensic Biology Unit.
And how many years did you work at the state laboratory?
I started first at the Department of Public Health, State of Connecticut. I worked there for 12 years, doing approximately what I am doing now when I retired. From 1999 until my retirement, I worked at the State Forensic Lab in Meriden.
And what were your responsibilities at the state forensic lab?
In the Forensic Biology Unit, I was tasked with examining evidence for the presence of blood and body fluid, as well as taking samples for touch or wearer DNA analysis. I also was able to be educated by the FBI laboratory, and I examined human hairs for the lab as well.
What type of educational and training background do you have in doing these things?
I have a Bachelor's of Science from St. Joseph College, which is now University of St. Joseph in West Hartford, Connecticut. I majored in biology chemistry with a Bachelor's of Science degree. I also have a Master's of Science from the University of New Haven. I have a concentration in criminalistics. I've also performed other continuing education courses throughout my career.
And do you have any specific training with respect to hair and fiber analysis?
Yes, the FBI, I was trained by the FBI. I spent 4 months at the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia, where they trained me as their own. I learned how to examine hairs, identify hairs, determine what body area a hair came from, and also do microscopical hair comparisons.
And since you've retired, you're being compensated for your preparation and time here, is that correct?
Yes,
Now, I want to direct your attention to laboratory case number 19-002984. Did you perform analysis under that case number?
I did.
And would it be fair to say that you split the responsibilities of the forensic biology unit with Ms. Christine Roy in this particular case?
Yes,
So in some instances, you analyzed certain evidence, and in other instances, she analyzed certain evidence. Is that fair to say?
yes.
And can you just tell us sort of your personal process or normal process when you receive a piece of evidence?
When I receive a piece of evidence, either through the evidence receiving unit, another person in the laboratory, or from a storage location in the laboratory, I proceed by documenting the packaging by photographing it. I would then garb myself appropriately, wearing a hairnet, a face mask, a lab coat, disposable paper sleeves, and gloves, which I change often. I lay down a piece of brown paper on the bench top that I've previously cleaned and start to examine the evidence. I open the bag, pour the evidence onto my paper. I photograph it as I examine it, and I look for the presence of any blood, in this case, or any hair-like fibers that I might come upon. I would package certain things separately, but for example, the hair-like fibers to be examined later on. And then I begin to test any reddish-brown stains that might appear on this item of evidence with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and choose the appropriate samples that I believe should be sent to the DNA unit.
Just approaching with what has been marked for identification purposes as states 110. Ms. Valonis, is this your curriculum vitae?
Yes, it is.
Judge, I move it in.
No objection.
States 110 admitted as full.
Could we have an exhibit number, please?
110.
Just returning that to the clerk. 6.
And would you read it slowly, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
State Police Exhibit 502E, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one pair of black husky gloves contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as submission number 62. Ms. Valonis, I'd like to talk to you now about submission number 62, permission to publish Exhibitron. And I'm just going to open the folder on this disc entitled State Police 502E Lab Submission number 62. Firstly, what was submission number 62?
Submission number 62 consisted of a pair of black husky brand gloves.
And what condition were they in when you saw them?
They were intact.
And did you do a visual examination of the gloves?
I did.
And did you notice anything on the gloves?
I did.
What did you notice?
I noticed reddish brown type staining on each of these gloves.
Were the gloves given different designations? In other words, was one glove given a submission number and another glove given a different submission number?
Yes.
And can you just explain to the jury which glove was given which submission number?
So this was submission number 62. And I designated the left glove as 62-1 and the right glove I designated as 62-2.
And I'm just going to display the first photograph in this folder, Lab 62 1S1. Ms. Valonis, can you see that on the screen in front of you?
I can.
And can you just tell the jury what we're looking at here?
We are looking at sub-item number 62-1, the left glove.
And can you just explain what, if any, action you took with respect to this particular glove?
Yes. The first thing I did was I collected wearer DNA from the interior of this glove. I took a sterile swab, applied some sterile water, purified water, and rubbed the inside palm area of this glove. I preserved that sample and I labeled that as sample number 62-1S2, wearer DNA.
And you're referring to it as wearer DNA. Does it have any other names?
It can also touch DNA. They're both fairly synonymous.
Okay. And specifically, I want to direct your attention now to 61S1. Was that a swabbing of the interior palm side?
It's actually 62-1S1. It's a little cramped on the
Oh, excuse
photograph. I apologize for that, but that is in fact a designation of where I took the sample of the swabbing of the left glove interior palm side.
And on the bottom of this photograph, there's an arrow with a notation. Is that the general area where you took the swabbing?
The arrow is designating the interior of the glove. Clearly, I can't point to the actual area, but it was meant to imply that I swabbed the interior of this glove on the palm side.
And so because you tested, or excuse me, because that swabbing was for wearer DNA, as you call it, you did not do any presumptive or screening blood tests or anything like that on that particular swab.
That's correct.
I want to direct your attention now to 62-1S2. Can you just indicate to the jury, this is photograph Lab 62-1S2 and 62-1S3, just beginning with the top photograph, and I'll zoom a little bit. Can you just indicate for the jury what we're looking at in the photo on the left-hand side of the top half of the photograph?
Yes, the image on the top left of this document is a photograph of the back side of the glove, the Husky logo on the back side of the glove.
And did you notice anything on that particular logo?
Yes, I noticed some reddish-brown staining.
And because you noticed reddish-brown staining, did you take any action with respect to that area?
I did.
What did you do?
I tested a portion of that reddish-brown staining with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood.
And then with respect to 62-1S3, and again, just to be clear, this is all still with the left glove, is that correct?
That's correct.
And
I'd
we'll-
also like to add a little bit more to that photograph, if
Sure.
I may. So the sample that I did collect, I labeled as 62-1S2. I erroneously labeled it on the photograph here as 61-1S2, but clearly it is 62-1S2. There is no sample in this case that is a 61-1S2.
And now directing your attention to the bottom of the photograph.
The bottom left image on this page documents two things. The Velcro closure, in my opinion, was very clean and very new looking. There was no trace material or hair-like fibers embedded in the Velcro closure. I also tested an area of this glove with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood. That is designated as the red positive sign on this photo. The positive screening test for the presence of blood indicates the presence of blood. I did not collect a sample from that area. I just noted that there was also reddish brown staining in that area.
So with respect to 62-1S3, which was another swabbing that you took, what area was swabbed there?
That was the strap-like closure at the base or opening.
I'm going to publish paragraph 9 of State's Exhibit 103. State Police Exhibit 502J, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as one red and black bent broom/mop handle with blood-like substance on the black handle contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted to the Division of Scientific Services and designated as Submission 55. Ms. Valonis, did you work on submission number 55?
Yes, I examined that item of evidence.
And I'm just going to pull up a photograph in the folder State Police Exhibit 502J, Lab Submission 55, Lab 55, paren RBL stain. Ms. Valonis, I'm going to zoom in. Can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
That is the end of this mop/broom handle. I call that the black cap end. And on the black area, I noted some reddish brown stains, one of which was located on the cap. When I examined this, I just simply photographed it at this point and did not do any testing at this time.
And why didn't you do any testing?
This was also requested to be examined by the latent print area, so I didn't want to disturb that particular stain at that time. I noted where it was, and I continued my examination.
And did you eventually receive Submission 55 back?
Yes,
And when you received it back, was it in a different condition?
it was.
How did it appear?
It was covered with latent print examination dust or powder, so it had a different appearance altogether.
I'm just going to pull up the photograph entitled Lab 55S2 through 55S4. Ms. Valonis, I'm going to ask that you look at this photograph. Is this a photograph, or I suppose it's three separate photographs, but do these images show the broom or the mop as you received it back?
Yes,
Okay, and I believe you can see the dust in these particular photographs from the fingerprint analysis that wasn't present earlier.
correct.
All right. Now, did you take any swabbings of reddish brown deposits from this particular item?
I did,
And is the area that was swabbed displayed in one of these photographs?
yes.
Okay, would you just indicate which one?
The top left photograph displays the interior broken end of this mop handle. Within that interior area, I noted reddish brown deposits. I tested a portion of that reddish brown deposit with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood and obtained a positive result. So I collected a portion of those deposits as 55S2 and forwarded that sample to the DNA area.
And in the bottom left-hand photograph, 55S3,
55S3 was the stain that we previously viewed. Now it's covered with the fingerprint powder, but I did collect that stain, tested it, a portion of that stain, with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood, and I obtained a positive result indicating the presence of blood. So I collected that stain as 55S3 and forwarded it to the DNA area.
and the bottom right image, 55S4.
The bottom right image depicts the exterior of the broken end of this mop hand or broom type handle. There was a staining, reddish brown staining on the exterior. I tested a portion of that staining with a chemical screening test for the presence of blood and obtained a positive result, therefore indicating the presence of blood. I collected that stain and labeled it 55S4 and forwarded it to the DNA area.
Now I'm going to display a photograph from that same folder entitled Lab 55S5. And actually, this photograph displays 9 separate images. I'm going to direct your attention to the image in the middle, on the right-hand side in the middle row. Could you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at?
We're looking at the entire item of evidence, which was a broom/mop handle, which, as you can see, was bent in 2 places. I collected a swabbing for touch DNA analysis from the entire red barrel of this handle and labeled it 55S5.
And no screening test done on this, it was just forwarded to DNA, is that correct?
That's correct.
I'm going to publish paragraph 10. State Police Exhibit 502K, seized from Hartford by Sergeant Kevin Duggan on May 31st, 2019, and identified as 4 pieces of black plastic garbage bag with black duct tape attached to 2 pieces contained within State Police Exhibit 502, seized from the scene, corner of Albany Avenue and Green Street, Hartford, Connecticut, was subsequently submitted
For DNA analysis, and I designated that collection as 88-3S4.
And so no screening test for blood was done on that particular swabbing, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, after you completed the 4 swabbings that we've just discussed on this particular item, was it given back to Latent Fingerprints for them to do their own analysis?
I did take one more sample. I labeled it 88-3S6, and those were a trace collection, hair-like fibers and other trace materials from the bag interior. So I collected those, labeled those, and set those aside. But after I collected the trace, I did forward this bag to the latent print unit.
Incidentally, you had mentioned that some of the areas that you swabbed had a red or a brown color, is that correct?
Yes, reddish brown staining.
Not visible in the photographs. How were you able to view them?
It was difficult because it is a black surface, but I saw some reddish brown staining, and I knew that I had to collect that sample prior to going to latent prints. I didn't want to lose it after they process it, maybe with their dust or however they process it. So it was my intention to make sure that I collected that staining before it might be more difficult to find it after their process.
And you eventually got the item 88.3 back from Latent Prints, is that correct?
Yes.
I'm just going to display the photograph, Lab 88.3 post LP. Excuse me, Your Honor. Can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
This is a photograph of the bag after it had been processed by the latent print unit. As you can see, it's in a different form right now. The knot has been unknotted per se, and I received it back in two separate portions. The main portion of the bag, and above that main portion of bag was a smaller portion of black plastic.
And so I want to just direct the jury's attention so we're clear. This is now the top of the bag where the mouse is scrolling back and forth. Is that correct?
Yes, the top is on the top side, correct.
And this portion here, which appears to be a oval or circular portion of plastic bag, you indicated that this was detached from the rest of the bag?
Yes, it is.
And so after this, did you perform any additional swabbing when you received it back in this condition?
Yes, I did.
I'm just going to pull up the photo, Lab 88 3S7. And can you just indicate to the jury what we're looking at here?
Those are two separate images of the exterior of the bag, you know, one side of the bag, and I flipped it over and photographed the other side of the bag, both being the exterior of the bag.
And is the area that you swabbed and designated as swabbing number 7 displayed here?
It is.
And I'm just going to direct your attention now to the left-hand side of the plastic bag in the top image, which appears to be near the opening. There appears to be a blue outline. Is that the area that you swabbed?
Yes, I designated on that image the approximate area that I swabbed on the exterior of this bag for touch DNA analysis.
And similarly, the bottom?
Yes, correct. I swabbed the exterior opening of the bag for DNA analysis.
And now I'm going to show you a photograph, Lab 88 3S7, paren 2. What does this show?
That shows the separate portion of the black plastic bag as I received it from the latent print unit.
And did you swab this as well?
Yes. I swabbed both sides of that black portion of plastic bag as S7 as well. May I take a moment to review my notes?
Certainly.
So I want to be clear that S7 was a swabbing of both sides of this piece of black plastic bag, as well as the opening, interior and exterior of the bag, collected all together as one swabbing and designated as S7.
And that included this area here, the detached portion of the bag. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you swabbed both sides of this as well?
yes.
Okay. Ms. Villalobos, do you have gloves?
I do.
Okay. Ms. Villalobos, I'm approaching with what has been already entered into evidence as State's Trial Exhibit Number 53, specifically a bag labeled Submission 88-003. And I'm just going to ask if you wouldn't mind just looking at the contents of that bag and telling me what it is.
It is the black plastic bag and piece of plastic bag that I examined labeled 88-3
Judge, would it be all right if the witness stepped down briefly?
Yes.
with the item of evidence?
Yes, yes, ma'am. And I'm going to ask, would you mind just, and I can take this, would you mind just fanning out the bag and just indicate to the jury, and I can help you if you need.
If I ask counsel to stand back just a little so I don't have to stand over by his table, so I can't see what's
I
going
can
on.
pass them.
Oh, okay.
Is this all right, Attorney Shaw?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is indeed the black plastic bag that I examined. As you can see, the area that I tested and collected, the reddish brown stains labeled S2 and S3 are marked on this bag with a silver marker. My initials are also within those circles. The swabbing that I took, that I designated as S7, was approximately the edge of the black plastic bag, interior and exterior, as well as the black portion of the bag.
So this top area here, the interior and exterior, would have been swabbing 7, is that correct?
Yes,
Along with the separate piece?
yes. Well, imagine that the bag was knotted and someone may have been handling this bag as I imagined as I examined. Yes,
Upper left, well, the way.
well, as it's displayed on the screen.
Yeah, I realize. So, all right, so as it's displayed on the screen, this is the real size of it?
Correct, that's taken, let's say, with the naked eye.
And this image, which is on the screen, which is I'll just identify it since it's turned, I don't know how to fix that, but there's some language written around this enlarged version. Would you just describe, first of all, what does this say?
There is a square that I drew on this image. This square is encompassing the root portion of the hair that I removed. So the square, and there is a line that leads to some writing. The writing says 88-1-1S2-1 with an asterisk, and it says 2 DNA. So that is the human hair, the root portion of the human hair with tissue-like material that I collected from the sponge, and I sent that to DNA. The other writing on that image says remaining shaft 88-1-1S2-1 RAL, which means retained at lab.
And that's your handwriting, correct?
Yes, it is.
And then the other two images, there is a blue square at the edge of the, what looks like the fiber here, is that correct?
The human hair, yes.
So you did by now determine it was a human hair, correct?
I did.
Okay, and then if we go over to this image here, is this a microscopic enlargement of the hair itself?
Yes, it's a low-power microscope that I use to capture these images.
And this is the shaft part that you testified about?
In that image, there is a bracket, and the bracket has a number labeled 88-1-1S2-1 asterisk. Now, the bracket and the line leads to the other photograph. So I am depicting a magnified image of the same hair root in those two images.
Right, so in other words, this blue line here, it looks like it maybe has an arrow at the end. This is what you're referring to, right? This blue line that goes between those two images?
Yes, it's the same hair, the same human hair with tissue-like material at the root at different magnifications.
Okay, so now we're going to go to Exhibit U, which we're not going to put on your copy. It will be replaced with a color photocopy. So there are 3 images on you, correct?
Yes.
And would you just read what it says in the image? And I realize it's sideways, so I can either turn it. It's sort of counterintuitive, but all right. First of all, what does this image here, the one on the left top, indicate to you? What is it showing us?
It is a picture of the human hair after I removed the root with the tissue-like material. It is labeled on the photograph, root portion previously removed, with an arrow pointing to the end of that human hair.
And then this image to the right, what is this showing us?
The image to the right shows the tip of that human hair.
And what about this lower image here on the left here? What is that
So-
showing us?
Lower left depicts a mid portion of the shaft of that human hair. These photographs are taken, the root end, the tip, the mid portion, for clearly photo documentation and review of the evidence by other examiners who review my work and testify that my work is accurate and complete.
In fact, everything you do has to be reviewed by another technical person, correct?
That's correct.
To make sure that what your conclusions are, what you wrote, there are no mistakes or typos or anything like that.
That I haven't gone rogue and gone off the SOPs, that I'm doing things according to the SOPs.
And just tell them what SOP means.
Standard operating
All right.
procedures.
And there are written procedures and training you go through in order to follow a certain procedure, right?
Correct.
And finally, could you just read what it says here at there's your handwriting below where it says 881-1S2-1. Just read what it says for the record, please.
After root portion removed, all photos 100x objective.
And 100x, is that 100 times enlarged?
Not necessarily.
Tell us what that means then.
The microscopes that we use for this image is basically your standard microscope that you might have used in high school, where you have the oculars that you look through, you see through a tube, and there are lenses at the bottom that you can rotate, sometimes smaller, less magnification to higher magnification. So I used the objective that was labeled 100x. Because I take a photograph, I'm not only going through the lenses of the microscope, but I'm also going through the lens of the camera. So I can't say that that's a true 100 times magnification of the object because of the lenses. And the camera that we use has a zoom feature. So we don't really know exactly how many times magnified that thing is.
In any event, this is magnified larger than the 0.4 centimeters of the original size, correct?
Correct.
You sent this over to DNA for examination, correct?
I sent the root portion of this hair to DNA for examination.
All right. And these are going to be my last couple of questions, so just bear with me for a moment. You talked a little bit about, you mentioned mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA in your direct examination, right? And you're not the DNA person on this case, correct?
That's correct.
That would have been, as far as you know, Kristen Medell, correct?
Correct.
But there is a difference between mitochondrial DNA and nuclear DNA, correct?
Correct.
When you're examining, well, mitochondrial DNA is from the mother side of the family or the maternal lineage, correct?
Yes.
And so therefore there would only be X chromosomes in it, right?
Yes.
But if, whether it's from a man or a woman, you'd still only get the X chromosome from mitochondrial
Well,
DNA.
I take that back. I don't want to go down that route because I think I misspoke.
Oh.
Mitochondrial DNA does not have X and Y chromosomes. So I would like to withdraw my answer and leave that to the DNA analyst.
All right, but in any event, you do know that mitochondrial DNA is from the mother side of the family, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you know enough about biology to know that the mother side of the family doesn't have a Y chromosome, correct?
In nuclear DNA.
in any DNA, right? There's no Y chromosome.
Gonna object, Your
All right,
Honor.
I'll withdraw the question. I don't have any other questions.
Nothing further, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Bailonis, you may step down.
Thank you.
May I have a moment with counsel for a moment? Your Honor, by agreement, the state is going to make a color copy of exhibits T and U, defense exhibits T and U, which I guess are admitted as full. I didn't hear if we were agreeing to
Oh,
that.
there was no offer yet.
Well, they were displayed to the jury, Your Honor. I
Yeah.
don't have an objection. Obviously, it was her work.
Right.
Thank you.
So offer is full.
Defenses T and U admitted as full.
But by agreement, for the benefit of the witness, the state's going to make a color copy, and the copies will be the exhibits rather than the witnesses, so she can have this back.
Thank you.
But I will leave it with the clerk, or should I give it to the state with the court's permission?
Well, probably just give it to the state. Are there any other witnesses the state intends to call?
Not today, Judge.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of your day. We plan to reconvene on Monday at 10 o'clock. Please have a safe weekend. Please do not discuss the case. Please follow no media about the case. Have a good afternoon.